Hi, I'm Jeff Murrah. I want to welcome you to True Texas History. And today we're going to be talking about the statue in Marshall, Texas. At first when I started this series, I thought there were just a few cities that we would be visiting and talking about. It seems like every day there's another one with another petition and when I listen to what people say, like with this one, the official spokesperson says, this statue has no value to any African American or black people. And I'm thinking, if it has no value, why spend the time and effort to do anything? Apparently it has value if you're expending this effort. Marshall, Texas is unique in that it was also the state capital of Missouri for a while. Not many places can claim that. In terms of the men from Marshall, there's some phenomenal things that happened out of Marshall. You had people like W.P. Lane. And W.P. Lane, in many ways, he was larger than life. A Texas Ranger, he fought in the Texas Revolution, served as a Texas Ranger, fought in the Mexican War, and ended up fighting in this war. Had the W.P. Lane Rangers, and this unit, they formed there in Marshall, and they were going to get sworn in Austin, but they ended up having to take a 2-week hiatus to go and chase Comanches out of the western part of the county before they could even make it down to Austin. People forget that there was a frontier in Texas, and that soldiers and armed people were needed to protect the frontier. It was an important thing to do. And you also had the 14th Texas Infantry, the 1st Texas Infantry, which was part of Hood's Texas Brigade. There's been volumes written about Hood's Texas Brigade and their accomplishments. And I'm only going to touch on one or two because there's no way that we can hit on them all. They earned the nickname the Ragged First because many times their uniforms were very ragged. They got literally worn out. And it was funny in one episode, somebody was complaining about the ragged backsides of these soldiers, and Lee commented something along the lines, "Those are my Texans, and no one ever sees their backside." That was pretty good. They were part of the shock troops, and they gained part of their claim to fame in the Battle of Gaines Mill because they went ahead and went up a slope, captured an artillery position that other units failed to do so. And after capturing it, they held it against some cavalry attacks where horses would come charging in, and they 1st Texas formed a square and protected themselves, and they beat back the cavalry attack, which was quite an accomplishment back in those days. And many of the other counties contributed to the Texas Brigade, and I'll talk more about those stories when I hit some of the other counties. But the unit that was part of the 1st Texas Infantry, they were known as the Marshall Guards, and they were seen as the cream of the crop in terms of what they went through. Now, there was also the 7th Texas Infantry. Now, that's a fascinating unit. They saw action in many parts of the war. In fact, they were the unit that, the southern unit that made the most headway at the Battle of Chickamauga. They served under Granbury. They were at Port Hudson, which that was the longest siege ever fought on the North American continent. They held out against several major attacks there. In fact, some people call it Fort Desperate or Fort Defiance because the fighting was so desperate there in terms of taking it. It was the last stronghold on the Mississippi. You hear a lot about Vicksburg, but it was Vicksburg and Port Hudson, and we had Texas troops at both of them. But the 7th Texas was there. Now, 7th Texas was also unique in that the flag that they flew, most of the time you hear about the Confederate flags and it has 13 stars on it. Theirs had 15, which there was only a handful of units that had those, and their regimental flag was captured at the Battle of Franklin by a Wisconsin unit, and actually one of the fellows went on to become the mayor of Green Bay, and he kept it up there on display for years before it was returned. It was never officially captured because if a flag was officially captured, it had to be shipped off to the War Department to be cataloged and documented. But a lot of the soldiers, they would capture these regimental flags and would keep them in their private collections for a while. And that's what happened with the flag of the 7th Texas. Now, if you ever want to see it, it is located there at the battlefield for the Battle of Franklin over in Tennessee. The unique pattern is definitely something unique to that flag, but Marshall made quite a few contributions. In fact, one of my ancestors came from the Marshall area, a fellow by the name of Pendleton Murrah, who went on to become a governor of Texas. But Marshall was an important city during that time, and the men who volunteered to defend it deserved to be honored. I mean, they were soldiers. They did their duty to protect their homes from invasion. It's a shame that petitions are being circulated to remove that honor. I find it interesting that, the monument itself talks about, this is essentially kind of dedicated to the men, and one day they will stand in judgment. And that's a fair statement. We're all going to stand in judgment one day. So, it's I don't see a negative message with it, but then again, a lot of things don't make sense these days. But we will remember the history, and we do remember them here at True Texas History. So until next time, I wish you vaya con Dios, my friend. Goodbye.